crowdfunding, you're going to hear deep analytical statistics on 2024. The good, the bad. Going to look at some of the top issuers, going to look at the realism and what you can take as a founder, as a CEO, so you can succeed with your capital raise here this year. And joined with my partner, our COO, Tim Martinez, who has made it a thing to participate in these January webinars to kick off the year. Tim, glad you're here. Want to give a brief on your background so the audience understands who they're hearing from?
Yes, absolutely. Hello. Great to be here. I don't know how many years in a row we've done this, but I do appreciate the tradition of, kicking the new year off with equity crowdfunding statistics and investment crowdfunding and all the fun stuff we can talk about. But my background is really that of a blend of entrepreneurship and a lot of capital raising, and most recently, probably more over the last 5 years, a lot of mergers and acquisitions. So I've been very fortunate to kind of see the whole spectrum, but spent a very, very long portion of my career capital raising and doing the whole song and dance with pitch decks and family offices and the outreach and all that jazz. But when we discovered this beautiful industry of investment crowdfunding a good 10 years ago, I was very excited for us to plant the flag and say we're going to help entrepreneurs in this new arena. So that's what I'm excited to talk about today, and that's a little bit about my background.
And for anyone who's new to DNA content pieces, we've worked on over 500 investor marketing campaigns that have collectively produced 9 figures of capital across content, advertising, and outreach. That is what's in the background as we talk about these insights, these recommendations. It's not just our thoughts towards the vertical as much as our firsthand experience. We've worked with many of the top issuers to date, working with top Regulation A plus campaigns right now, and are a stand for a higher success rate industry wide. I'm going to pull up our deck here, but we do this monthly webinar. Also do a weekly podcast episode. I'm part of the Crowdfund Professional Association board. Just voted on to the executive committee there. So we'll have more content pieces with the CFPA, doing projects with Super Crowd. Last year we were at the Reg A conference and did Startup Starters Investment Week. We try to really get our findings out there. Working on the front line of marketing performance, investor acquisition, so that there are more groups in the top spots here. So have our nice pictures here. You can see our titles. Have to add a disclaimer that we're not security attorneys. The following reflects our thoughts. So always run everything by compliance. If you see anything about advertising messaging or anything you're going to be doing towards the use of your campaign, the offering page development, the marketing materials to follow, you really need to run by legal and get sign off to make sure it's done right. But we're going to hop right into the key insights and trends for Reg CF from 2024. As Tim mentioned, we've been involved since the beginning, May 2016, and have been watching this evolve from there. So, Tim, why don't I fire through the stats here, and you could give some thoughts towards it a little bit. But basically, slightly down this year, the past couple years, about 420 million raised. 2024, as found from these statistics from the King's Crowd 2024 analysis put together by Brian Belay and Chris Lestrino at King's Crowd. Highly recommend you go over there, read their articles, look at the data. We're going to talk about it from a marketing perspective here, but 343.6 million, 18% decrease from 2023. That being said, new spread in terms of equity-based and debt-based deals. We have to make a point not to call it equity crowdfunding. Regulated investment crowdfunding is the appropriate term. And because of this, because of the increase on debt deals on platforms like Honeycomb, there's a list of different platforms where investors are coming in and different set of terms than purchasing equity. Tim, what are your thoughts for this? I mean, we're going to look at comparisons with, VC pullback and other things that we watched last year. But, number difference and how it reflects our business over the past year, as well as the equity and debt percentiles.
Yeah, I know we got a lot to get through here, but my brief comment here is sentiment is a real thing. It is a real thing in the marketplace, and there was a lot going on in 2024, and I think the election year and a lot of just a lot of folks we talked to on the capital side were just kind of holding out to see how things shake out before they get more aggressive into their investments. So I think we felt a little bit of that. There were some of those ripples towards the end of the year, but now we're starting to see like a renewed optimism across the board. Ran a few surveys recently, and optimism is up. On the debt side, I think I think it's an exciting category. I think there's a lot that can be done with crowdfunding debt. So I believe that 12%. My prediction here is it's going to be higher than 12% for 2025. I don't know how high, but I see that category growing.
You heard it here. So these next stats I've repeated quite a bit since January 7th, when the data was first released. $1,500 is now the average investment for Reg CF. Now, that takes into account deals that run on FINRA regulated portals such as Start Engine and WeFunder and Republic and Net Capital, uh, Silicon Prairie, Title 3 funds. This is $1,500, averaging both of those worlds together. On the portals, it's statistically lower. On self-publishing platforms, it could be higher, but fewer campaigns run there. Build your own audience. There's a list of pros and cons for each, but put together, $1,500 average investment, up 26%. $1,190 was the average investment size on Reg CF for 2023. I believe there's a lot of misconceptions around that. When I talk to different issuers, they think it's six-figure investments, large investors that are coming through. And while that does take place, it's a high volume of minimum level investments that you're going to see. The minimum you put into your filing, whether it's $100, $500, probably somewhere in between, makes a difference for that reason, and the number of larger investments you get. And then have to point at the campaign raise total, where $60,000 was the median. I don't even want to move to the average yet. That number is striking in the sense that 50% of Reg CF issuers in the year 2024 raised $60,000 or less. Past years, 100. I did a research project last year going into the advanced search of King's Crowd, and all Reg CFs to date, it was at about 100. So that number surprises people when I share it. But to see it at 60,000, there are groups out there that are looking to do small raises. Some of those debt deals averaging into it, many of those are, $50,000, 30,000, 100,000. But there are also groups that come to us and say we want to raise 1.235 million. We then want to do our audited financials and raise 5 million. Going to talk about the stats for how many groups reached 5 million. But this is what we're looking at. Now, there's going to be a positive twist on this. I'm not just pointing at these stats to say the vertical is not producing enough or anything like that. I could tell you the groups under 60K are early marketing. They're putting their deal live and thinking, hey, we're on the internet. We're going to get investors. We're going to raise millions. Look at how much has been raised for these other issuers on these platforms. But that's simply not the case. 257 being the average for the year. So taking into account all issuers, dividing by how many there were, you all know what averages are. But last year is about 366. This year it's 257. So larger campaigns averaging it out, but again, the volume of lower ones taking effect here. Tim, you want to add some notes on the company valuation and overall thoughts here?
Um, I kind of want to go back to just the average investment size real quick.
Please.
Because I think one of the cool things about investment crowdfunding is the lack of haggling on your valuation, more or less because we're dealing with retail investors, and they're not grinding you down the way a VC would, or potentially two or three high net worth individuals and angels that are going to cut you a check. That aside, the investment size being up is a positive sign. And we always kind of set $1 million as our first benchmark. So if you needed 1,000 people to give you $1,000, which was, if we go a few years back, was the average investment. Now you need 650, 700 investors to give you $1,500. So when you start playing that, what we call the millionaire math, it's actually leaning into your favor. It's moving into your favor. Whereas the median being a little lower and that 60,000 median, that same deal, I'm with you on that. That to me just says there was plenty of companies out there that maybe did some friends and family raising or put some of their own money into the deal, maybe raised from a few investors, but there was no marketing. And that is why we're here on this webinar to really talk about the marketing.
Yep. And you're right. The average investment size matters more because the averages for how, all issuers, the medians, we're just taking the data together to show what's typical, what's common. But the average check you could apply directly to your projections. You don't have to worry about those other groups out there. I do think it matters for issuers that are live, groups that are planning on going down this vertical, because I get asked questions around marketing performance and projections from a prospect, from a strategic partner who's going to send their groups our way. What is my return going to be? If I spend $50,000 on marketing, if I spend $10,000 on marketing, what am I going to see back? If I said, hey, 2 to 3x, 100, 150K, they're already, exponentially higher than the median campaign for the year.
Mm-hmm.
So have to state that there's inherent risk with capital raising. Not all campaigns make it. 50% didn't get over this mark. There's inherent risk with marketing. Not all marketing campaigns work. Otherwise, Facebook, Google, they would just sell results. But it's more about how to look at what the actuals are and figure out how you're going to see success as part of the process. So as we get further into the data, uh, we funder number one, 99 million raised. Start Engine 86. Should point out, Start Engine typically has far fewer campaigns live at a time than WeFunder. I believe it's about 203 and 119 at the moment. Dealmaker took on much more market share this year, and we'll see that with the combination of Reg CF and Regulation A plus. Uh, Past years, we'd see Republic. There'd be other groups fighting for this spot. But just looking at Reg CF, Dealmaker's taken on a much larger percentage of the top raises. That could be as well because many deal maker campaigns are issuers who saw success on a portal, then moved to deal maker, took their audience, took the marketing channels that were working best. Uh, Dealmaker has excellent marketing support on top of that as well. So, those combinations of things, but I want to point out the existing audience and proven marketing approaches. They have some of the larger raises, which is why you see them taking on similar amounts with far fewer deals at that. But these platforms alone accounted for 2/3 of the Reg CF investments. Uh, Before getting to the other approximately 90 Reg CF portals out there. So, as Tim was mentioning with the election year and regulatory adjustments influence campaign strategies, that's something we heard from investors. That's just not our own, speculation. That's something we heard from founders. That's something we heard from, groups in the space. And you saw, mid 2023, excuse me, mid 2024, slower market stats. We look at the numbers every Monday morning, and there was some months in there, under $20 million raised for the month across all Reg CF. There were months in the 40s, twice as much as that. So we did see lifts. November, December was good. I mean, we saw it improve later in the year, maybe more confidence. But there were only a few 4.8 million to $5 million campaigns, five to be precise, even though it's not on the slide here. 1,403 new offerings, so slightly down from 1,448, and more campaigns live from last year that carried over to this year. and 69% met the minimum goal. Although that's not a great stat. The minimum you set knowing you're going to surpass it, 'cause you can't, uh, you need to take the funds out. You need to hit your minimum. The minimum's a misleading stat. Some of the portals will say, hey, 90% of our deals hit the minimum, but 70% did here. So, um, Tim, you want to talk about some of these stats, just what's on the page?
Sure. Reggae is an exciting category. I mean, we've been keeping our eye on reggae for quite some time. Five largest reggae deals range between 20 million and 75. Top 20% of deals raise 20 million. If you know much about reggae, that your cap is up to 75, it's a category that has not fully been explored. It's an expensive category. The filing process is lengthier, but it's a very exciting category. We've actually gone to the reggae conference, I think 3 years in a row. I know you've spoken at it multiple times. Uh, I've never been to that conference and not seen the sentiment very bullish. I've never gone there where you're not filled with a room of people saying this is the new category. We just haven't proven it yet, but it will be proven. So if you're out there and you're considering a reggae, I would say stay the course and let's get a really killer marketing campaign. Let's get the good data together. Let's figure out what you're doing because we want to turn you into one of the reggae success stories.
Yeah. And I think one misleading thing about reggae, regulation A, if I just say reggae, people have
I know
told
it
me
feels
they
like
thought I'm
reggae.
talking
I
about
know.
reggae. It's like, oh, is
Yeah.
that the
The
reggae
reggae
conference?
conference.
Oh, you were at a reggae? Okay, the guy was at a reggae show in New York. I don't know what that means, but there were 32, I believe, filings. Excuse me, 32 Regulation A plus campaigns that went live as tracked by King's Crowd last year. So when you see 20%, that's six deals. When you see five largest, that positions them there. I don't see. Here we go. Um, there was a correction on this number on King's Crowd, which I hate to mention, but our stat was based on, it was built, before that, about $3,000 as the average investment size. Potential growth in campaign total raise due to increased investment amounts. So, talking about what that means in comparison to a Reg CF, um, twice the size of a Reg CF average investment. You bring in 1,000 investors. Tim was saying that's an important number. You bring in 1,000 investors to a Reg CF deal. Perhaps that's 1.5 million visits. Excuse me. Perhaps that's 1.5 million raised. To get those 1,000 investments, maybe you need 50,000 visits. That much traffic to your page. Uh, that same amount of traffic, the same amount of conversions on a Regulation A plus deal would average to 3 million. And you may be looking at a similar cost of capital. Of course, the filing's longer. Uh, there's usually other things going on in the background to influence those metrics, such as successful Reg CF campaigns, or companies that are further along with more marketing budget, or companies that have a larger, more responsive audience. These stats, I believe, are very surprising, and spoke at the microcap conference. I go to, LD Micro, Roth. I mean, places where it's public companies running regulation A deals as well. And 50% of these deals don't surpass 1.7 million. They could have used Reg CF, aside from, public and, other, complexities there. But just talking about 5 million versus 75 million, 1.7 million, a lot of these issuers could have used Reg CF, and we've seen some past Reg A issuers use Reg CF over the past 12 months, and 6.5 million being the average raise total. Again, pretty close to Reg CF. You could do a side-by-side Reg CF, Reg D campaign likely and hit these numbers. Tim, what do you think about it when you hear the stats and comparisons?
Well, we've spoken to some groups that, for whatever reason, decided to pump the brakes on that. But I think about the right profile of an organization that would go after reggae. It's not going to be, the first $1 million in many cases. It's going to be your subsequent raises, like you said, side by sides. It has the potential to create more excitement. And so much of what we do is lives in the psyche in the mind. If I told you, hey, Jason, I'm raising $300,000 for my project, that sounds very different than if I said, hey, I'm raising $30 million for my project. You think about the deal completely differently. So I'm not saying if you need 300, go ask for 30, but right. I mean, you can do whatever you want here, but the psychology of the investor. So when an investor looks at a campaign and there's, 3 million, $4 million raised from 5,000 investors or what have you, whatever the math is, it starts to look very exciting. And you start to ask this question as an investor, what do those people know that I don't? I got to get in. There's something going on here that I got to learn a little bit more about. So, maybe you're a large franchise. Like we spoke to physical franchise groups that have actual locations and they want to increase their footprint. They want to raise $50 million and they already have an audience. And maybe they want to do this to increase and get their capital versus going to the banks or going to the private market. So I think it's very exciting, very interesting. But again, it's not proven because we just looked at the numbers and we looked at the stats, but we want to be part of that momentum. We want to be part of those groups that help. And also the other thing I would mention is it's not going to happen all at once. And it's most likely not going to happen with one group. It's not most likely not going to happen with one investor, right? It might be subsequent raises. So just look at the Reg A plus category as this lengthier process than you would with the Reg CF.
And market during the pre-launch, there's commonly delays in filing, and those are missed opportunities if you're not audience building during that period of time. Worked on a test the waters campaign last year for Reg A that uh, ended up producing over 4 million in the first week from audiences that came from that pre-launch, where you can see on the stats here that that's better than most of the deals out there in the first week. But gonna get to recommendations here. So you need to really have an understanding of the market you're getting into. That's the theme of a business plan, a marketing plan, our marketing strategy. We're starting with industry overview and competitor marketing audit because success leaves clues, and you want to do everything you can to hit the performance metrics. I mean, the most successful founders are the most proactive and have the right info. They also have this grit that we joke around about a lot, but is it consistent on these deals? So now going to get into the 25 things to expect and some recommendations around that, but had to start with the what so, had to start with the stats, had to start with what's actually occurring because if you've spoken to service providers in the space, including us, you've probably seen the top case studies, but you may not have heard about these numbers, which we make a point to talk about, but you may not have heard about these numbers. So I'd rather show someone what they're getting into and how to succeed versus just saying you're going to succeed and setting the wrong foundation for, a campaign. Um, Avoid pitfalls by learning from 2024's top performing campaigns. As mentioned, focus on strategies that position your company in the top percentile of issuers. The deck was made knowing I was going to say that last page there, as you can see from the similarities. Tim, you want to talk about this first trend?
Absolutely. So we've been talking about this trend. We've been seeing it uptick, but minority business owners are always there's a lot of opportunities out there for underserved communities, for minorities, for female founders. These are really exciting categories. And we're seeing more and more of that as a trend towards the crowdfund. And it's a great marketing angle, right? So if I'm Hispanic, so I say, hey, I'm a Hispanic founder. I'm doing an opportunity for other Hispanic investors. Like it just sounds different than if I said I'm raising $1 million. I could still be raising $1 million, but if I'm sincere in my approach and why I'm doing this, and there's a story tied to it, that's what we do as marketers is we tie in stories. So we believe that any opportunity that for minorities out there, we think there's a big one here within the crowdfund space for minority business owners to raise.
Absolutely. I mean, working in this vertical, it almost feels funny to mention because it's the, full spectrum of industries. We have worked with hundreds of founders, spoken to thousands, but later have seen the stats and The funding that takes place outside of this vertical does not have the same volume of founders that would be, classified in minority categories, female-led companies, female founders. There's great articles about this on King's Crowd, so it's really doing amazing things, which we don't always see, but it's very, very true. And we've worked with some of the top founders in each of these categories. Smaller portals are competing for dominance. So we looked at, Start Engine, WeFunder, Dealmaker, and there are, as I mentioned, I mean, you could go to the SEC.gov site, see a full list um, of portals, FINRA as well. You can go on there, see the full list of portals, and this week, Angel Funding was one of the top portals. They have one deal live. So while their stats are going to differ from a platform that has 203 deals live, uh, they're still running very effective campaigns. Industry case studies at that, and there's a list of other portals could mention there. So when we talk to founders about which portal they should be on, we're platform agnostic. We say talk to a few, go with who you have the best feel for. I could tell you there's going to be advantages with each. We'll call it pros cons, but to look at strategically, not to focus on any one of those. And it's more about what you do with your offering page than where you're listing it. And some provide white glove service, extra support, investor audiences. You work with influencers, Tim. You may be considered an influencer yourself, right?
I'm blowing up on TikTok. At least that's what I tell my kids. They're like, you have 6 followers. Um, I just want to make one comment too on the smaller portals. There are so many brilliant people out there in the space. Uh, that come from fantastic backgrounds, that have real backgrounds in capital raising and building businesses and entrepreneurship. It's not always just the top two guys in the space. So if you're thinking about doing a crowdfund, just pick up the phone and start calling 4 or 5 different portals. Call us. We'll give you direct introductions to some of our friends in the space. Very brilliant people. Entrepreneurs should always be making those types of connections. And you never know, you might do a crowdfund at different portals throughout the life of your business. So we'd recommend picking up the phone. That's why we're agnostic. Now, jumping forward to me being an influencer, the investment trends, there's so many, it's an influencer driven world, right? And it's social media driven world. How many of those influencers out there are considering crowdfunds? Probably not many. I mean, most of them don't even know what investment crowdfunding is. It's a conversation we have all the time, which is if you walk into Starbucks and say, does anyone know what investment crowdfunding is? Maybe one person raises their hand. But if you say, has anyone ever heard of the NASDAQ or the S&P 500 or Robinhood? Everyone's going to raise their hand because it's a household word, right? So we haven't even scratched the surface yet. And I have a feeling that once folks like the Mr. Beasts of the world start getting wind, and you don't have to be the size of Mr. Beast, but once these people start getting more and more wind of what they can do with their own businesses and with their own audiences, they could just be, dropping these crowd funds and generating all the capital they need to fund all their business streams. So I think that could be, the future.
Are you talking about Mr. Beast, the owner of TikTok?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just joking. It's a news headline this week. We'll see how this video ages. That could actually be a true statement later, but there's speculations. I think TikTok actually denied it, but we're going to see what happens with TikTok later this
However,
week.
we have seen a lot of influencers come in and think their audience is just overnight just because they're doing a
Correct.
crowdfunding gonna, fund the full campaign, and that doesn't happen either. So,
Yep.
yes, there's a lot of room here for the influencer space, but you still need to adhere to best marketing practices.
Absolutely. And just to say a word on tiers of influencers, as you're pointing out there, I don't want to name any names, but I've seen influencers with over 10 million followers with what we'll call underperforming campaigns. I've seen micro influencers with under 100,000 followers and even nano influencers with under 10,000 followers produce high increments of investments with a single post. As a marketer, I want to see it repurposed across various channels, even used in advertising. We learned that on some of our early Regulation A plus campaigns, the power of using an influencer and an ad throughout the entirety of the campaign beyond just that one post and the day or so to follow. On the organic side, and it's about volume, test optimize scale. You could see in the corner of the screen here. That's the name of our podcast of how we try to have influence in the space. I'd recommend checking out Tim on LinkedIn and following his newsletter as well too. Get some thought leadership. But it's going to be exciting to see larger, more mainstream names enter the vertical this year. There are some I can't talk about that we're working with. There are some that I've heard are going to be doing some larger promotions. But as we hit mass adoption, there will be more of these. What can we say about Web3?
I see a comment here real quick that this person is only seeing a dark screen. So I'm not entirely sure what that is about. Hope you can see her face. We will make this podcast recording available on YouTube. So if anyone else there is having trouble, we'll make sure the recording gets out there. Cryptocurrency. Well, cryptocurrency is,
And getting confirmations, we can see it may have been uh, an issue on a user's side or a brief when we're going back and forth from full screen to slides.
got it.
Apologize um, if uh, if anyone can see it, it will be recorded. Um, but getting confirmations, it's live.
Cool. Well, we saw a big, big spike with Bitcoin. I think crypto's had its ups and downs from NFTs, the crypto exchanges, the altcoins. We've been right there front and center through all of it. What I'm hoping as that industry matures and the audience matures and the projects mature and we continue to see those wins, then absolutely look at these fractionalized opportunities, different pathways to raising capital through the crypto sphere, I'll call it. I don't see why that's not going to continue. I think that will just continue to be a category. Not only to mention, I mean, we've been at conferences for probably the last, I don't know, almost 8 years or so. If I go back to some of the early crypto conferences, the ICO days, I mean, there's been people that have been bullish the whole time, the whole way through. Like they're not going to stop. They've been waving the banner the whole way through. So, and those people have massive audiences. So there are still plenty of success stories happening in the crypto space, and we think that trend is going to continue.
Yep. And as part of the Crowdfund Professional Association board, I could tell you some of the conversations the CFPA is having with the SEC. It's the same folks who are working on the next sets of regulation for cryptocurrency and digital assets. And this may be the vehicle, the exemption they're pointed to. So we work with companies like this. There are many successes in the industry with groups in this space. So anticipate more and more. And growth and repeat, recurring investors. We do extensive data mining and upload lists for advertising targeting for our campaigns. We see investors with large portfolios of Reg CF campaigns they've participated in at this point. I've also worked with data providers who've put, some investors with over 50, some with over 100 different company shares in their portfolio. So more active investors leads to a healthier ecosystem as a whole. We work on the marketing side, but compliance, you know, Tim, you want to talk about, getting set up for a campaign and what a simplified process could mean?
Yeah, I mean, before there's much, the processes have been more simplified over the last couple of years, and we hope that continues. If we go back to the early days, you'd have to find an attorney who knew how to paper this up, and that wasn't easy, and it was very expensive, and there wasn't any software solution. So we're starting to see more and more of that happening. Compliance is always going to be an issue. We know that we're seeing different types of compliance on the marketing side for the campaign messaging. So compliance should be there. It's a good thing, by the way. Compliance is good. Right? We're making sure we're not stealing money from little old ladies. I mean, that's where this whole thing goes back to. But if the entrepreneurs are racing towards the finish line. I mean, they need capital. They got to get this done. They're moving fast. We as a marketing agency are trying to work with them quickly to get everything set up, everything dialed. And then a lot of times there's these hiccups of compliance. So we are hoping whoever's out there on the compliance side that you can help make this faster, make it smoother. We think there's opportunities for other companies to come into the space to make this a smoother and more efficient process as well.
Exactly. It's one of the beautiful things about Title III of the Jobs Act. It's designed to provide that investor security, investor protection by having issuers go through the right avenues in setting up the legal and financial audit, financial regulatory sides of their business so that it's a fair marketplace. The stricter compliance oversight as well too. Have portals that say there's tougher in some cases, unnecessary processes. Again, as marketers, we think it's a good thing because we want to make sure it's real companies, real deals, real numbers, transparency across the board.
Yeah, and I would say just start with knowing what you can and can't say. And that's a simple question you can ask anybody in the industry. Most people will be able to just tell you right off the bat, say these things, stay away from these things, forward-looking statements and all that. So the more you know about that, the more educated you are, the faster you can get around these compliance hurdles as well.
The alternative format for financial filings beyond GAAP is something that the CFPA has publicly announced they are pushing for and have participated in those meetings with the SEC. Has been talked about with Congress as well too, Senate Finance Committee specifically, and hoping to see easier access points for smaller businesses to utilize these exemptions. So something I'm anticipating seeing, something worth mentioning here. This is part of the discussion.
New tax
There will
incentive.
be a tax bill in
Yes,
2025. And
exciting
one of the
stuff.
things we're excited about is the proposal of a tax credit. So, what's currently in front of the governing bodies is a 50% tax credit of investments for the year up to $2,000, $1,000 tax credit. This could really get attention into the industry, encourage more investors to participate, encourage more accountants to speak with their clientele about investing into deals in the space, something we're really rooting for. So you'll see more content from us about it. If you follow the CFPA site, social pages, you'll see more information about this as well.
That's exciting stuff. Yeah. I mean, we just want to get more people into the space investing. And if there's an incentive for them to do so, why not? Right. I mean, a lot of these minimum investments, $300, $400, sometimes even lower than that. We saw that the average investment is $1,500. So as we get more people in to the space, then we can create more advocates of this investment crowdfunding. And then they're going to find other opportunities and more. So whatever we can do to bring more people into the space and any incentives like this, I think is really going to help.
Increased understanding and clarity from FINRA is something that service providers in the space portals are pushing for. Again, easier, more straightforward rules that issuers will follow, portals will follow, will lead to more groups, more individuals participating in the vertical. Tim, I know you follow a lot of financial email newsletters. We're getting more to the fun stuff. What would this mean for the space?
So we've been following the crowdfund industry for a long time. I would consider us to be those people in that space, in those communities that are also maturing. We've been watching it. We're looking for more success stories. As we get older, we have more disposable income, can make bigger investments. I think The social platforms have, I don't know. I mean, we've kind of seen what's happened with Meta and X and all these different platforms, but they're not new, by the way. They've been around for a long time. So there's a lot of communities, a lot of groups that have kind of stayed together over the course of time. I think that just the general maturity of those communities, of the industry, of the platforms is ultimately helping our case versus everything feeling so new. And when things feel so new, sometimes it feels a little sketchy. Like, do I just want to jump on this new social platform and jump into this new community? And that's kind of, in some regards, going back to the crypto, that is maturing as well. So when we were talking about crypto 5, 10 years ago, it was like, what is this? What is this thing? I wish I knew. But everything's maturing. So I think that adds just a little more gravitas to the whole industry.
And when we talk about success rates, the top campaigns tap into these communities. Financial email newsletters, bigger platforms. You mentioned Robinhood Snacks, Dollar Flight Club. There's a list of smaller email newsletters that have really grown in terms of not just the follower base count but quality. I know of some small LinkedIn groups that large percentage of their constituents act and purchase shares in these deals. So whether we're talking about websites, whether we're talking about their email newsletters, whether we're talking about social pages, whether we're talking about entrepreneur centers and local community members at that, we're seeing these audiences grow, mature, and take action when they see the marketing, the promotions of these deals. So any marketing strategy for 2025 should include outreach, should include media budgets, should include the incorporation of these communities as accepted, as fit, because they are that powerful.
Yeah. A lot of affinity groups out there as well. I mean, I think that actually plays into the 12. Um, so if we think about, let's call it affinity marketing, we go way back to 20 years ago, but we golf. It's possible we would follow the same golfing podcast. If the golfing podcast was recommending a golf product that you and I were talking about on the course, and we were both excited and interested in it, why wouldn't we throw a few $100s at it just for the feel goodness of to say, as your analogy, I'm at Thanksgiving dinner, I'm telling my buddy, hey, I just invested in the same, or I go to the golf course, or maybe that organization is also hosting an event that all people that are invested in it can also go and participate at that event. We've been to some of those as well. That's the affinity, that's the community and social aspect. So when you get deep inside of inside of those groups, they don't need to be very big. As we already saw, to get to $1 million, an average investment of $1,500, maybe the group's 650, 700 individuals that cut a check and make an investment. That's not very large. Some of these groups, a small group could be considered 2, 3,000 members. And if that 2, 3,000 member affinity group that's deep into fishing and you're coming up with some fishing tech product and you start having those deeper conversations and you get the network effect, that's how these things happen. I think what typically happens is we just bypass that, right? The issuers just completely overlook that and they start looking outside of their sphere and saying, who can we find to invest in this thing? Is like, that's not the right question. It's like the real question is who's already interested in these things. It's harder to create converts. You want to sell to the converted as much as possible.
Well said. I saw Sherwood Woody Neese from Crowdfund Capital Advisors, an authority in the space in terms of analytics. Woody was one of the creators of Title III at the Jobs Act and was at the White House when the bill was signed. And he said 80% of investments in Reg CF are first and second degree networks. So your first degree network, your email subscribers, your social followers, everyone in your phone address book, uh, they can really put together a strong foundation for the amounts raised for your deal. And then who they share with can substantiate, up to 80% of what's raised. The first question we ask a prospective issuer is how large is your audience? And for these reasons, yes, you want to run advertising, you want to perform outreach and get new people to the deal, but there needs to be some social proof. There needs to be some traction once they get there. It's going to be 7 touch points or more before they invest statistically. So every visit to your offering page, if there's more raised, if there's more comments, if there's more traction, it really goes a long way. Now, crowdfunding becoming more mainstream. We talked about larger influencers, larger publishers, being able to look at the companies you are patron of online, physically, in your city, in your town, um, to watch brands that are more mainstream utilize these exemptions to see larger names that you're familiar with, you have a relationship with, enter the space. What we believe is inevitable and going to happen to a much larger degree this year. I'm confident that this is going to be the primary approach towards potentially seed capital A round, maybe even removing this naming convention altogether. I picture 5, 10 years out. What does 2035 look like? What does 2050 look like? And it's utilizing online tools to raise capital and following the compliance so that this is going to be the obvious fit unless something greater is created, but it'll likely be evolutions of Reg CF regulation A plus. So it will be mainstream and is becoming as we speak. So, success fueling community growth. Some people think Reg CF, regulation crowdfunding, is just a way to raise capital. And we're on the front lines of performance as marketers because we know that it's what makes a campaign successful. And ultimately, this is a marketing play. If you bring on, 50,000 visits of your offering page, you're probably getting your marketing out to millions of people. If you get 1,000 investments off of that, you have roughly 1,000 people who may be ambassadors of the brand, and those millions who have now seen the highlights of your product and in context of your offering. So we watch, firsthand in our client list, as well as other groups in the industry, a successful investment crowd fund leads to growth for the business. And by the next round, there's valuation growth. The actual calculations are showing that this company is larger now. It's doing more in revenue. It has more users on their platform. It is growing. So could it be considered a growth hack? Potentially. We've watched groups go from 20 million, $30 million valuations to a billion, multi-billion dollar valuations. The success here is fueling the growth of brands. It is fueling the community. You hear about deals that raise 75 million, that raise 5 million, that raise a million from their customers in their town. And it's attractive. It's worthy of social sharing, and it grows, our community through the process. Let's talk tech.
Okay, I'll jump in on this one. Um, there is so much unexplored territory out there with the integration of tech and these new investment opportunities. I mean, it feels like every day there's something new coming out, and we're on the front lines, and we get to see some pretty incredible companies. And I think what this, 10, 11 years in this space has taught me is that we don't know anything. We haven't seen what's coming around the corner. And I think that is the most exciting piece of this whole thing from medical tech. We have this whole wealth transfer and the baby boomer, and there's new tech coming out for them. There's construction tech like Boxable. I mean, we just go down the list. So it's super exciting to see what's coming around. And it's hard to have the crystal ball. One thing I know for sure is that something that we couldn't even have imagined is going to be raising capital in 2025.
And we get the luxury, the opportunity to be able to work with groups that are doing things that are new, different, seeing tech integrated into the marketing of the campaigns itself. So, attempts to implement AI into crowdfunding workflows. Uh, I would warn that, whoever's behind the wheel, uh, is going to accept the work that is produced from any artificial intelligence. So if they're a marketing expert, they're going to be able to point out things in the visuals, the graphics, the videos. They're going to be able to understand the copy to a different degree, and AI can make mistakes. AI can spit out something around the parameters that checks the boxes, but an industry expert, let's say for your given vertical, think about the space you're an expert in and a generic output, and how that could turn you off to a company in your industry and make you feel like they don't understand what they're doing. So I would, warn that it has to be used correctly. But there are automated tools in marketing that can reach out to thousands of your core target audience members in a day, and even customize messaging along the way. Video production that would have cost, tens of thousands of dollars, even for a single day shoot in years past, can be done almost instantly using some of these tools. So they're tools. You give a bandsaw to one person, you give it to someone who's never used it, you give it to an industry expert, you give it to someone who, was in wood shop 30 years ago. You're going to get different level of craftsmanship. But at the same time, technology and the implementation of it can make these campaigns a bit easier. It can make it easier to have a uh, large stage rollout um, in a more streamlined fashion. So we're seeing that in the use of campaigns. Still prefer human talent at this point, but that human talent combined with some tools can create a larger blast. And expanded online presence of crowdfunding platforms. We've talked about mainstream investing sites for not just alternative investors, but public market, day traders, swing traders, hearing about these types of opportunities, lifestyle, social media pages, Ride the News, these different platforms that are promoting these crowdfunding deals. So that's just going to continue expanding and expanding. I picture, this being mentioned on Tonight Show, historical broadcast television, news type stations, which we'll see on the local level already, but just continued expansion is happening right before our eyes, and a lot more of that to come in 2025. And the rise of secondary social platforms for engagement. We're joking about TikTok earlier. TikTok shop, TikTok social selling is a big theme in the marketing communities outside of regulated investment crowdfunding, and it's happening within as well too. Different models, affiliates, commission for the sale of securities is not allowed. So different types of arrangements and setups. But if nothing else, on the brands pages and organic levels and tapping into the discovery engines on TikTok, doing so on, as funny as it may sound, Snapchat, definitely Reddit, Quora is included in that category. X, primary platform for many of the top issuers. Look at that as secondary underneath Meta, Facebook, Instagram. When we talk about the ad placements, when we talk about the viral type of effect, that is the head of the conversation still. But at the same time, which is why issuers use those tools, at the same time, the secondary social platforms are accountable for far more engagement, far more traffic. We do studies on campaigns we don't work on and see these channels as key drivers in many cases. What type of content should go out pre-raise, Tim, and why is there an increased focus around the pre-launch marketing, the test the waters campaigns?
Yeah, because getting into it is laborious and could be very costly if you do it wrong. So, do people care? How do you know? How do you know people care? Do you have enough content that's been tested out there? Are people responding to your message and responding to your value proposition, responding to your investment opportunity? Are you well connected? Do you have good strategic partners in the space? Good content can build all that for you, right? You have to build. There's so even we were talking about marketing automation. So even in the process of creating content, forget what the topic of the content is. Even just the process of creating content, we create a lot of content here at DNA. Just the process, the setup, the things that you'll learn and building up good automation, good systems, good processes around your topic models and things of that nature. It gets you into the game in a different way than just going live. Just going live, and then we'll figure it out. It's like let's warm the market up a little bit. Tell them who we are, tell them why we exist, tell them why they need to know who we are. Make a splash.
Exactly. And that first day of the crowdfund, that first week, that first month, again, sets up the foundation for how much you could raise, what your trajectory looks like from there. So take advantage of that time leading up to the campaign. Make sure you do it compliantly, talk to the right professionals about it, but really embrace that window and set it up correctly. Set your audience up to be able to invest. Just firing through the last ones here before we get into what we're excited about most. Long-term influencer partnerships becoming more prevalent. I say partnerships. Some of them are equity holders. Some of them have programs that map out what month one, month three look like, and from one raise to the next. Hyper personalized campaigns tailored to investor portfolios. So, advertising targeting allows you to filter by interest. You can then draft advertising messaging copy to speak more directly to those individuals. Can be done on a far more granular level with outreach as well, and working with any publishing partners, having it customized for their followers and their followers' interests. Also, AI-driven targeting using predictive behavioral analytics. So we're able to plug in different data sets, different databases, and again, use tools to find the right audiences at the right time and be able to target those individuals accordingly. Want to focus on this for a second of improve investor follow through in the funnel. I mentioned it's 7 touch points or more. Years back, there were some generalizations that you put up the offering page, and it may take people a little while to invest, but they're going to come back and do it and just keep getting that messaging out there. Where now it's a content calendar that talks about the movement, the traction a company's getting. We like to say that you want to paint the picture that your group is a moving ship. It's hitting its destinations, it's hitting its goals with or without the investor. And now's their opportunity to hop on the ship. So being able to have multi-channel uh, activations and have that living in the funnel. It's something that we more commonly see, especially on the self-published campaigns. We saw Dealmaker taking on a large percentage of Reg CF combined. They're the top platform in terms of Reg CF and Regulation A plus results. Large media buys for campaigns. Some of those publishing partners have, $200,000 minimums. Some of the larger issuers are spending millions on advertising. They're doing so once they see performance, once they see success. But at the same time, media buy, you look at, every dollar, every $2 spent as a visit to the offering page and realize it's purchasing much larger amounts of traffic. And then finally, in terms of our predictions, increased visibility for content across platforms. So increased visibility of content across platforms. Like we said, secondary channels, use of influencers, more of a mainstream touch, it is all happening. It is all leading to the customer acquisition and marketing. That's what we're seeing. Want to wrap by giving you our final statements. Tim, what excites you the most about 2025?
I would say working with the people that we haven't worked with yet. I want to continue to see big success stories. So that's the thing that I track probably the most, and the thing I am most excited about is seeing those campaigns that oversubscribed, seeing those campaigns that came back for the second and third round, seeing those campaigns that we have actual investor stories and success and wins like that. That's always what motivates me is more wins.
Absolutely. And I think this is a year of growth for the public markets. I think we're going to see a year of growth in alternative investments. I think we're going to see unprecedented numbers with cryptocurrency and Web3, vertical investors. And the same is going to be present, and not just with the VC communities, which had taken a pullback years to come of the past few years. Equity crowdfunding had stayed more stable. We both saw a bit of a pullback in 2025, but private investments, public private investments using Reg CF and Regulation A plus are going to be on the rise. You're going to be seeing them. You're going to be talking about them. The top issuers are going to be doing things that have never been done before in terms of marketing. We're seeing that on our top Reg A campaigns and are going to be here doing our monthly webinars to talk about it along the way. Please feel free to reach out to Tim, reach out to me on LinkedIn, through our website. Always happy to have a warm marketing discussion, and direct your questions straight to us. Can have a chat through it. Want to do whatever we can to see a higher success rate industry wide in 2025, leading into 2026. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next month.
Bye.